It's just like it's just like little things. It's like where are they learning that from? So what's happening in college? What's happening in college at these teacher prep programs or um, organizations like Teach for America and Teaching Fellows. Those are great organizations, but they go recruiting just anyone who
Anybody.
they recruit anybody. They promise them some like the master's degree, and like there's some great people that came out of TFA. There are great people that came out of Teaching Fellows, but then there are people that are just there like, I just want this free
I'm
degree.
gonna get this free degree. Exactly.
And it's the same thing, even if they actually went through a traditional.
Over the summer, and then I'm gonna sit there in September and teach somebody's child.
Because when you go through a traditional program, you'll know like, do I want to do this or not? Because you have different field experiences that you have to meet as part of the graduation requirement, things of that sort, as opposed to you're going to take this 6-week intensive and then I'm going to throw you in one of the worst schools in the Bronx and then make you stay.
I think regardless of the program, you don't know and learn how to be a master teacher
until you get into the classroom.
Years of being in the classroom. And so what happens, unfortunately, is that you go through some years
where you're not that great.
And unfortunately, those kids are your guinea pigs, right? So when I think back of my own experience as a teacher, I'm like, I thought I was the best teacher in my first year. You couldn't tell me nothing.
I knew I wasn't happy.
But when I looked back, I knew I didn't know that. And when I look back 4 years later, I'm like,
That was terrible.
oh my God, what did I do to those kids? Because there are two things that stand out in my mind that I'm like, I had to understand what it meant to be a teacher, regardless of the fact that I came from the neighborhood, regardless of the fact that I'm like, I understand and I have high expectations. I didn't understand what it really meant to be a teacher and how to help kids, because you always revert back to your frame of references, which is how you were taught. And so how you were taught more than likely is not the way that you need to teach. So for me, what stands out for me is I remember my first semester as a teacher, I failed my first period class. That was a English language learner class. So these are students who don't understand English because they come from I failed everyone but one. And I was like, what's wrong with that? They didn't do the work. Like, I really didn't understand why it was problematic to fail everyone except for one because they didn't do the work. Until later when I'm like, oh, they didn't understand what I was saying. And then I just didn't understand. And I remember that same year, my 8th period class, I used to do the worst thing in the world, which was round robin reading. And so what round robin reading is, and don't ever do it, and if your kid tells you that the teacher does it, be mad about, is where you go around a class, you have the textbook open. This is how I was learned, taught. So I'm like, oh, this makes sense. And you're like, you read next, and you read next.
Can't read.
And so this student hadn't come to class for a week. And I remember another person came to me from the office and was like, I saw the student and he was like, oh, I was suspended. And I was like, I didn't know you were suspended. Nobody told me you were suspended. So now I'm like, oh, you can't just be suspended. How could they not tell me? And then realized that he wasn't suspended. And he told someone, and he said, I didn't go to her class because I didn't want her to call on me to read. And I was like, oh, shit. I am a horrible person. Because you couldn't tell me up until that point. I didn't know, like that I wasn't doing the right thing. Because what I did was, as every teacher, is I went back to how I was taught. And so my point is that it doesn't matter the program you go to. You are not going to learn unless you have a good person in the school, your assistant principal, your principal, whatever coach, to help you along the way. Because teaching, unfortunately, I know people may think this, isn't I gave you this very intensive experience, or you had 2 years of this master program and now you're prepared. You're never going to be prepared to deal with 30 lives, 150 lives of people who are coming to you with baggage, who are coming with you on varied levels of skill, and who are coming to you trying to just figure out themselves. So you're never going to be good at it. You always have to learn. And so the problem is that some people, one, aren't willing to learn, because they got into the profession because they want to get that pension and they just want to be there. And some people who are making decisions, like everybody isn't, for me, you're not an expert in education because you went to school, because we all went to school, right? So if I can't drive the New York City bus, or I can't get into behind the conductor wheel of a train because I've been on a train, then you can't tell me how to teach. You can't tell me that you know how the ins and outs of education because you rode on a train, because you can't go and drive one. And so that's how, so I think that until people own that, because they never will, until people own it, you're not an expert, and there's still there isn't one size fit all. We're going to continue to have this conversation.
And another point, new teachers, they have this mentality that I've been good at everything my whole entire life. So I'm going to be the best teacher ever. And so they step into, or they were recruited by these other programs because of their high GPAs and things of that sort. And they get into the classroom and they're like, why is this so hard? I'm like, this is the problem, that you thought it was going to be easy. Right. This is the hardest thing that you'll probably ever do in your life.
And then it becomes the students who are uncooperative and this and that, instead of you actually being an engaging teacher.
So you taught for 27 days. What do you mean when we get easier?
So how much training, how extensive does the training have to be before you should be able to enter the classroom? And then how much room are teachers being given for professional development?
I think for training, I think field work and field experience is the best training that you can ever get. And having good cooperating teachers, when a person is a student teacher, that's helpful, because sometimes when you're a student teacher, the cooperating teachers want you to grade their work. Like, just grade this. I'll let you teach like to do now. Like, what are you doing? And so having as much time in a classroom is the most important thing. So it's not just learning from the textbook or sitting in an education class. It's actually getting your hands dirty, because that's when you learn how to teach, when you're actually in a process of teaching. So just requiring more than just one semester of student teaching could be is helpful, and more than one semester of not just doing regular observations, because I can sit down and I can observe all I want, take all the notes that I want, but when I actually have to do it, it's totally different than what I wrote on paper. And so just giving more opportunities in more than 15 weeks to just, not even 15 weeks, I think you have 6 weeks in like a middle school and 6 weeks in a high school if you're going for secondary ed and things of that sort. You need more time than that, because when people, what is it, 3 years, and people are done with the profession, or go within the first 3 years. And that's, you don't start to learn how to teach until year 4 anyway. And so it's like you don't even give yourself a chance, because it's hard.
But you can't have, and so the other piece of that is the observations and the student teaching. But then once you become a teacher, there needs to be mechanisms in place at the schools to support you, because plenty of schools make the assumption that because you graduated or because you got that license to be a teacher, that no one needs to help you. Right. And that is far from true, because everyone who's ever been a teacher knows that you need someone to help you for at least 2 years to just figure out how to manage your life as a teacher, right? And so, but most schools, I don't think they're unwilling to do it. It's just not set up in a place to be able to afford to have someone who is just dedicated to do that, because still one person can't do it, right? And so you have to make a decision. I know these teachers suck. I know they need a lot of help. No, it's real. Like, I know this department is struggling, but I don't have anybody. So what do I do? Okay, I'm gonna pray for the best. Like, what? Like, it's tough, because you don't know what to do, because it's just not set up in a place where you have enough funding or the time or the energy to support teacher development, which is the most important, because you will not have that graduation rate, middle school, elementary school, or high school, unless you have good teachers, unless you're just playing with numbers and just pushing kids out. But the support after means a lot. So it's just, a teacher can't be a good teacher if they're not in the right environment. Some teachers will thrive no matter what when they have a school where they are working long hours, because they are just that organized and they're that person. Some teachers will not strive in that. Some teachers will strive in an environment better where they have a shorter day and they have a less load. But I think we have to own that not everyone
No, yeah, you're right.
can do this job, and not everyone is built for a charter school. Not everyone is built for a public school. Not everyone is built for a transfer school.
Right.
And acknowledge that and figure out what you want to do. But nobody,
Yeah,
nobody's able to do that.
I've had that conversation with other friends who are educators, and I've definitely had that conversation with myself. Like, as an educator, I'm great in higher ed. I'm not going into anybody's high school and trying to that's not me. And that doesn't make me less of an educator. It just means that I know
your lane.
my area of expertise.
own it.
Exactly. And I know my lane. And I stay in my lane. And I knew that once I went into a high school, I wasn't going to be in front of anybody's classroom. I'm just not there because I'm not here for classroom management. I'm not here for that. I'm not here for anybody telling me SMD. That's not what we're about. I'm here to teach people who want to learn and engage on a certain level. And I think that that's totally fine. Just like you said, know your lane and stay in there. I can be an excellent educator as long as I'm here. I'm not trying to teach kindergarten. When Miss Dixon got her extra week off, I'm just like, what's going on? He need to come back. So because I can't deal. Like, so you just need to know your lane. Yeah, I think if more people took ownership of that, then things would be a lot easier or more cohesive. We could be a little more progressive.